Welcome back to Canadian Justice, where we're talking about issues within the Law Society of Ontario, why regular Canadians should care about what's happening in the Law Society. I mean, ultimately, it will impact your cost of legal services. And some of these issues include scandal, exorbitant expenses, as well as overreach. And Jared, this issue with the Law Society CEO compensation, this is far from the first problem we have seen in recent years with Ontario's legal regulator. There have been a number of moves that many lawyers, including yourself, have been highly critical of. And one of the most widely reported ones is a little bit older now. It's the statement of principles that was introduced a few years ago and ultimately repealed. Maybe you can explain what that was, your views on the statement of principles, and what ultimately happened with that policy.
Yeah, convocation or the board, if you will, of the Law Society became very politicized a few years ago, probably about 6 or 7 years ago. And one of the manifestations of that was they passed a resolution requiring all lawyers in the province of Ontario to profess their support for certain fashionable political ideas, including diversity, inclusivity, and equity. And so every lawyer, in order to practice law, had to affirm their wholehearted belief in these political concepts. And obviously that's highly inappropriate, and arguably, with what's going on south of the border, it could be actually illegal at this point for lawyers who wish to practice on both sides of the border to start professing support for these highly divisive topics. In any event, that they passed that resolution. It was an overreach. Everybody sort of understood that. A protest movement formed around it, and eventually that resolution was repealed internally when the uproar became too much for the organization.
Now, there have actually been other similar these DEI policies from the LSO. The statement of principles was not the end of it. For example, the LSO introduced an equity inclusion index, and that's something that John, you have been critical of. Maybe you could tell me about what that policy was, the equity inclusion index, and what you disagreed with about it.
The Law Society's Plan Inclusion Index uh, was based on the idea that statistics could be gathered to determine whether uh, lawyers from certain defined demographic groups were getting their fair share of legal jobs at different levels in the practice of law around the province. No doubt what was really in mind was the major Bay Street firms with their hierarchies of leadership. The the original plan was to publish statistics uh, indicating which of each firms had X% of lawyers from Y demographic groups in different job levels. Fortunately, the entire process bogged down when, thanks to the efforts primarily of Bencher Murray Klippenstein, it became public that the entire statistics gathering process to begin with that had led to the conclusion that there was a problem which could be solved by this next statistics gathering project was utterly groundless in terms of facts. This is all now on the public record. Uh, in the spring of 2024, the inclusion index was acknowledged as dead by the Law Society. A would-be substitute for it was then to have been cooked up by approximately the spring of 2025. Something tells me that all time schedules will have to be reshuffled now. As you have mentioned, I attempted in June 2022, when I was ventured to have all work suspended on the inclusion index until the convocation could review the entire situation.
Mhm.
I must say that my motion was summarily tabled, not even considered on its
Mhm.
merits. 2 years later, the inclusion index was officially killed.
We've got to go to break now, but we'll be right back.